Wow. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here for this important story. I'm Robert Sumwalt, and I'm a board member with the National Transportation Safety Board. We have over here the investigator in charge for this accident. It's Pete Kotowski, and that's last name is Kotowski. So again, Kotowski. And Pete has over 38 years of experience in this business. I want to tell you today has been an extremely productive day. It's been an extremely busy day. And in fact, there's still daylight. We will continue to be working throughout the afternoon. It started for us at 8 o'clock this morning, where we held an organizational meeting to outline our investigative protocols and to establish parties to the investigation. Parties to the investigation are those organizations that can provide technical expertise to the NTSB's investigation. And the parties are the Federal Railroad Administration, CSX, Baltimore County Fire, Baltimore County Police, and CSX Transportation. I'll start out by talking to you about the railroad, the locomotives. The train had 2 locomotives and 45 cars. Of those 45 cars, 14 were loaded with product, and 31 were empty. Of the 14 loaded cars, 4 contained hazardous materials. And 3 of those cars containing hazardous materials derailed. The car with the sodium chlorate, sodium chlorate, was the one that exploded, and that's based on the physical evidence at the scene. I'd like to emphasize, I had questions earlier today about tank car failures. None of the tank cars on the train ruptured or failed. And there were a total of 15 cars that did derail. Thank you. Let's talk just a little bit about the truck and the trucking company. The truck was a 2003 Mack Granite roll-off configuration, Mack Granite in a roll-off configuration. So, of course, that just means that the trash container on the truck can literally roll off and roll back on. The trucking company is an interstate carrier, and the name of the company is Alban Waste LLC. So, Alban, A-L-B-A-N, Waste LLC. The roll-off container was being transported from Alban's facility, sort of behind from where they were coming, and being transported to a facility in Baltimore about 6.5 miles away. The container was loaded at the time of the crash. Now, let me paint for you a picture of what happened yesterday about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And what I'm going to do is paint for you this picture based on a number of things. Based on surveillance video, we've got a local company that was adjacent to the track at the point of the impact, roughly at the point of the collision. We've got a video image recorder, a truck. We've got a track image recorder. So many of the railroads these days have forward-facing cameras on the front end of the locomotive, and it's exactly for this sort of thing, where there are highway grade crossing accidents or pedestrians that are struck by the train. The railroads are putting these track image recorders on their locomotives so that they can see what happened in the event of these sorts of things. So the surveillance camera and the track image recorder, they are both good quality video and they are color video. We also have data from a locomotive event recorder, and we have physical evidence from the site as well. So that's using those pieces of data. I'll paint a picture for you. 17 seconds prior to the collision, the first of three train horn blasts begins. And the third blast lasts and continues up to and including the point of impact. And as you know, trains are required to sound their horns, their whistles, as they are approaching grade crossings. So we are able to hear the three blasts going up to the point of impact. 5 seconds prior to the collision, we see the front of the truck coming into the picture. 3 seconds prior to the impact, the front of the truck enters the track. And at impact, the train strikes the right rear tandem axle of the truck. The surveillance camera that was located on the nearby business shows that 33 seconds after the impact, the first smoke is visible down from the impact point. 43 seconds after the collision, we see the first flames on the surveillance camera. And 5 minutes and 23 seconds after the collision, we have the explosion. Preliminary information from the locomotive event recorder indicates that the train was traveling approximately 49 miles per hour at the time of the collision. The train crew placed the train into the emergency stop position, and the train stopped 4,244 feet after the train was placed into emergency, and that's just about 9/10 of a mile. So the train crew placed it into emergency. 4,244 feet later, the train came to a stop. I'd like to correct something I said yesterday. I indicated, may have indicated the wrong direction of the truck. As you're facing down the tracks from the position of the engine, the locomotive, the truck is coming from the left, crossing the tracks. So that's generally in a northwesterly direction that the train was traveling. Tomorrow, we've still got a lot of work to do. Tomorrow we will be conducting the post-crash truck inspection, looking at the brakes, the electronic control module of the engine, and all of the other things that we do following a truck collision. Looking at the general mechanical condition of the components. We'll be measuring and diagramming that grade crossing. We'll be interviewing the train crew. We'll be supervising the cleanup effort out there, and we'll be collecting additional information from the locomotive itself. And I want to say that although we've made tremendous progress today, I do want to emphasize that we are still very early in the investigation. We've only been on the ground up to and right there at the train tracks. Even though we got here at 6 o'clock last night, this morning was the first time we could get out and get up close and personal with the wreckage, and we've made tremendous progress. But this is only the early stages of the investigation. There's still plenty of work to go. We've got. I want to reiterate that we will not be determining cause while we're on the scene, and we will not speculate about what may have caused the accident. Lots of video these days. Everybody has phones and things like that, and so there's a lot of video out there, and video can be very helpful, as I indicated to you just now. The surveillance video, that's tremendously helpful. If somebody has some cell phone video or otherwise video sources that they feel would be beneficial to the NTSB's investigation, we would love to hear from you, and you can notify us through an email address that we've established. And that is witness@ntsb.gov. And again, witness@ntsb.gov. So, again, today has been very busy. A lot that we've gotten done, still more to go. I'd be glad to take your questions. Yes, sir.
Sumwalt, did the camera on the locomotive, or any cameras for that matter, were they strong enough to pick up what the driver was actually doing when he was crossing? Was he on the phone? Was he occupied? He didn't notice the train?
The question is, the video evidence that we have, the locomotive, the track image recorder, for example, is it such that the granularity would tell us what that driver may have been doing? Were the windows up? Were the windows down? Was he on the telephone? Anything like that. And we've only taken a preliminary look at it. I'm amazed with what our guys in the lab can do through enhancing photographs and video imagery. And we will hope to be able to extract whatever we can from that. I will say that as a course of a matter of practice now for any NTSB investigation, we will obtain cell phone records from the driver of the truck, and we will also from the operators of the train. But that's what we do as a matter of course for any investigation.
Any indication of what caused that explosion?
Well, what we are told, and this is preliminary information, but the physical evidence bears this out. The explosion, the sodium chlorate. Is that correct? Sodium chlorate?
Spell that.
Well, let's see. Can I spell that? Where's Sean? C. That's what I had written down too. Chlorate. Can I spell that? CHLORATE. The sodium chlorate. It was in a hopper car, a covered hopper car. So it's a powder, and when that car breached, somehow or another, and there's a fire that broke out. Remember, the smoke and fire broke out shortly after the derailment. So we will be looking at exactly what the ignition source is, but we are fairly comfortable at this point that the sodium chlorite is what ultimately exploded 5 minutes and 23 seconds after the impact. So we will be more closely examining the actual explosion, but we do know that car with the sodium chlorate, that is what exploded. There was a question right here.
What can you say about any possible pollution or contamination that was caused by the fire, the explosion, the smoke, either pollution and contamination into the air or into some of the waterways and streams?
And the question is, what can I say about any contamination of the air and the waterways as a result of the smoke in the area yesterday? And I want to emphasize that we are the NTSB. We are here to look at the accident investigation. So the information you're asking sounds like it's going to more likely come from somebody like the EPA. So that's not really our lane. We're here to investigate the accident. We will, though, be looking at the emergency response and looking at the timeliness of that, and the adequacy of that. So we will be looking at that. There's a question back here.
Say anything to assure people in the area that there's nothing toxic that they might be inhaling?
Can I say anything about the toxicity of the air? Same answer I just gave. We're investigating the accident. The local responders would be in a much better position to talk about the air quality at this point.
I know you talked about how fast the train was going. Will you be able to tell, or have you been able to tell how fast the truck was going at the point before impact?
The question is, are we going to be able to determine how fast the truck was going at the point of impact? And I feel that we will be able to determine that by looking at the video and looking at the frames per second and things like that. So I feel like we can, knowing the good work that our research and engineering staff does, I'm confident that we will be able to determine the speed of the truck.
Was the driver still in the truck when it was hit by the train, or had he bailed out?
Was the driver of the truck in the driver's seat at the time of the impact? I do not have information to confirm that one way or the other.
Was it a gated crossing as well?
Was
it an open crossing?
The question was it a gated crossing or was it an open crossing? And the answer is that crossing had stop signs on either side of it. It had a cross buck on either side, so the thing that says railroad crossing, and that's what it had. It did not have gates. It did not have lights. It did not have bells.
Mr. Sumwalt,
Yes.
because this is a collaborative investigation that you're in charge of, do you have a sense of the time elapsing between the collision and when local emergency crews on the scene found out what they were up against in terms of the fire and chemicals?
The question is, what was the amount of time between the collision and the first calls to 911 and the response, the emergency response, and that is all part of what we do in due time. To go back and look at the EMS logs. Go ahead.
In terms of not the emergency response itself, but when they learned that there were chemicals on the train.
And
Do you have a time lapse for that?
do we have a time lapse of when the emergency responders learned that there were emergency hazardous chemicals on board? And we do not. And I want to emphasize, we just got here. This is just the beginning of the investigation. And what we're here to do right now is collect that information, that perishable information that can go away with the passage of time. And we can always go back, and we will go back and look through all of those records that are kept by the first responders to see exactly when those determinations were made. Two questions. We'll take two questions, one here and then one here, and we'll start with you.
From the driver, is that crossing a private crossing, and do you know why that man was on the, in that area? Was he authorized to be there?
Okay, so the question is that a private crossing? And was the driver authorized to be there? Why was he there? We have to confirm whether or not it's a private grade crossing. We were under the impression yesterday that it was, in fact, a private grade crossing. Now we see that it has a DOT number assigned with it, so we need to ascertain whether that was, in fact, a private grade crossing or a public grade crossing. So that's something that our investigation will determine. Why was this driver there? His business is back on the other side of the track. Apparently he uses that grade crossing very frequently. So the last question here.
The crossing has foliage on either side of it, and it appears as if it would be difficult to see a train coming, that you would have to pull up very close to the track to be able to look down and see the train. Are there any standards that for visibility that may have been violated with this crossing?
The question concerns the conspicuity of that particular crossing. Perhaps is there foliage and things that would obstruct the view? And I was there at the crossing earlier today looking at it. And so as you come around a curve, and then it straightens out very quickly, and then to cross the railroad tracks. So tomorrow, as I indicated, we will be documenting and measuring, sketching out what that grade crossing looks like to see if there could have been obstructions to visibility. And so that is what we will be doing. That's one of the many things we'll be doing tomorrow. So I really want to thank you all. I think that, again, today was a very productive day. Tomorrow will be productive as well. I think that this investigation is right where it should be, actually even a little ahead of where it should be by this point in time, due to the great work of Pete Kotowski and his investigative staff. I want to thank you very much for being here.